Warren Huart, yes, I'm at NAMM 2017. Can you believe it? How are you, Jonathan?
Awesome, Warren. Always a pleasure to talk to our folks at Produce Like a Pro.
Okay, what usually happens is this: what happens is I sit back and Jonathan does the intro. So what are we doing here?
Today, we would like to talk about the Rupert Neve-designed Shelford Channel. What's badass about this is that first off, I'm talking to Warren Huart, who's made some of my favorite records of all time. You guys don't, I think you know, but you may not really know how lucky you are to have a guy like this show you what actually happens in the record business. It's so unusual. So many people who do this don't actually make records. One of the things that Warren and I like to talk about is people who actually make records.
$3.
$3. I'm a cheap date at the end of the day. To have someone who actually makes records instead of somebody who just talks about records or just posts. Unfortunately, in this industry, we have a lot of people who are more famous for their posts than for the work they actually do. Warren is more famous for the work he actually does. That's one of the things we love about Warren Huart. Video's over. Thank you for coming.
I don't know what I owe him, but obviously more than $3 for that one. But thank you, I appreciate it.
That's a $4 intro. A $4 intro.
There's a $4 intro. Can somebody lend me a buck? Chris, can I borrow a buck?
What we're talking about today is the Rupert Neve-designed Shelford Channel. Sometimes in the history of our company, Rupert has been really wanting to innovate, move forward, make new products, new sound. We have a lot of requests for the classics from the past. It's been very hard to get Rupert to do this because he just wants to move forward. At our special request, which is us begging him, we got him to look back at the past and bring some slight improvements and changes to this. So this, unlike a lot of our other gear, is designed to be vibey all the time. Not option of vibe, but starts with vibe and it goes to even more vibe. You've got the first transformer coupled mic preamp from Rupert Neve in over 40 years. 15 dB gain from the transformer, a real direct box. When I say a real direct box, what does that mean? High impedance. It's actually got a through, who would ever need that? And a ground lift. You can actually use the darn thing. 72 dB of gain. You've got a high pass filter, sweepable from 20 hertz to 200, or 25 hertz to 250 hertz. The high pass filter can be both in the audio path and or the side chain for the compressor. Then we've got an inductor EQ, and we've talked before about our inductor EQ. The low end, based around the concepts of a 1064, big, blooming, fat low end, 1073, that classic mid-range, and then a hybrid for the high end, a little more airband approach, a little bit more open than some of the designs from the past. Then here, we have Rupert's first diode bridge compressor since the 2254E. This is, again, 40 years in the making. So what did we bring to the table on this? Okay, a couple of very cool things. First off, it's a full rectifier diode bridge, so 4 diodes instead of 2. What does that allow for? Really fast attack times. If you were to possibly have a complaint about the 2254E, is that it's not a particularly fast compressor for certain applications. This will go to attack times under 1 millisecond. That's 1176 fast, which is very unusual in a diode bridge compressor. There's also a blend control in it. There's some standard ratios. There's some complex release times. In other words, we have fixed release times. We also have an auto mode, which is, classic fast to slow that you see in there. What's interesting about a diode bridge compressor? Okay, with no compression on whatsoever, threshold off, when you approach approximately plus 20 dB, you start to get saturation. In the same way that you'd see a diode clipper or a guitar pedal. It starts to go in distortion. What's interesting about this design and the way it's done, when you approach threshold of about plus 16, you're getting low frequency harmonics. In other words, all the distortion is weighted from 400 hertz down to 25 hertz. What does that mean? Warmth and power, size, weight. That's what we're always looking for from vintage gear. That's the tone that we look for.
I mean, I talk about it a lot, like in plugins, there's a lot of stuff that's like always distorting the top end. It's like the first thing you hear, but it doesn't give me what. Warmth is one of those words that we all love to hate these days because everybody likes to use it, but I like, the word you use now I love is weight, because it does, it just makes whatever sound we're working with feel like it has a bit more, and this is the wrong word, presence. It just feels like it's taken up more room in my mix, and
without more level.
Yeah, more level, but it's also like what?
No, without more level.
Without more level,
yeah. It's the harmonic structure. In other words, it's how it's overloading.
And it stops us from having to get into that situation where we have 47 guitar parts playing at the same time to make it sound full.
Right.
And what's better than putting on a record with 2 stereo guitars, bass and drums, and a vocal? It just sounds absolutely massive.
So many times, we've talked about this before, you get to mix something, and you pull up and there's 35 guitar tracks, and all you really want to do is find 2 or 3 of them that are good, put those up, and make that be the bass.
I feel like having, and you've been making records like as long as I have, and that was what.
Actually, I'm older than he is. He's younger than me.
But you think that was the beauty of Andy Wallace, and I love that we can talk about this stuff while talking about gear. Andy Wallace would get given albums to mix, and I'm sure you know this story, with para heavies, arpeggios, highline driving, you know, alternate melody, counter melody, whatever, and it would come back with stereo pair of guitars, bass, and drums. And
in your face.
In your
as
face,
well.
yeah. And he had that sound of the 90s, some of the best sounding records, because he just was like, yeah, cool mute, cool mute, cool mute, and the records sounded massive.
And he's also, I think, a master of creative and really well done frequency packing.
Yeah.
In other words, his mixes sound full and loud, and it's not just compression based. He's a real writer. He rides level all the time
Mark
in his
Endo
mixes.
too.
He's pushing into things. He's pumping up the chorus, bringing it back down, setting it down to the verse. He's playing the mix, which you only get when you get a pro doing it. You don't get that when you just saying, I have a static mix, I set it all up,
Volume
and
automation
freeze.
is,
And I mean, Andy was one of the kings of really doing an amazing, was and is one of the kings of doing an amazing job with that.
I've seen
There
Mark Endo.
isn't a lot of compression on Nirvana's record that he
Right.
mixed. There's less than you think there is.
No, I believe it.
One of his other tricks, he would clip the input of a PCM42. He loved to do that.
Oh, really? I have a
Slam that.
PCM42. I'm going to clip it.
The input limiter.
I'm going to clip my
input limiter does a very cool thing.
Okay.
We
All
just
right.
went up to that. Arcing back to this.
So it's great.
We've got parallel compression built in.
That's
We've
nice.
got a choice of silk red and silk blue. This is again harmonic weighting. Silk red, harmonic weighted in the mid-range area. Silk blue, low frequency harmonics. Then we did one other cool thing. On the back, there's 2 outputs. So there's 2 taps on the transformer. Why is that interesting? The main output is plus 26 dBm, full level, everything you want. The second output is 6 dB down. Why do we do that? Because an Apollo, an Antelope, 90% of the interfaces that guys and gals who are on Produce Like a Pro own clip at plus 20. So you can't drive the output of a true professional level piece like this into them. They distort. They can't take the level. So 6 dB down, you can saturate the output, which is what you want out of this gear, and not cream the input level.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's come up a lot recently inside of my academy. People have been asking me about it because I send them files, and like, here's a dynamic range, and I'm sending files that are like this, these big, huge files. And they're like, we're not used to that. And I realized that, you know, I'm on that cusp of the age group. The first 30 albums I made were on tape. And then the middle was the hybrid tape putting into Pro Tools.
We'll call that Pro Tools 2 and 3.
Yeah, Pro Tools 2. And then it was like tape transferring to Pro Tools for editing, and now it's a lot of the time all in the DAW with occasional tape use. I still do tape, but occasionally mainly DAWs. But my brain is still stuck in VU meters doing this.
Yes.
It's not down here, and I'm glad you brought that up because there's nothing wrong with the tolerances of DAWs having that kind of headroom. It's just a restructuring of the way that we think, you know.
Yeah, and one of the things is a lot of classic gear from the past was meant to drive plus 24, plus 26 dBm.
Right.
And you just can't soak the output transformer. You have to figure out something else to run it into to attenuate it if you run that where you're really banging
That's
it.
what tape did for us. Yeah.
I mean, what's the classic thing you do with your 1073s? You set it up for the right level, you go 2 clicks past, you're hitting the output transformer hard.
Yeah. What we always do, Joe Barisi and I talked about it a couple of years ago, is you basically, the rule that we were taught by the guys that are older and smarter than us was as soon as you can hear audible distortion, just click it back 1 and you're perfect.
Right.
It goes, and you go back 1, there it is.
Yeah.
Because you
There
know
you've
it's
got that size.
distorting, but it's not at that point where it's too much. You're like,
And it is about, I think you have a good point, it's less about warmth, it's about weight. It's about giving weight and impact. And that's what we're all kind of seeking when we're looking at our recordings, or at least a lot of us are.
let's talk about a couple. What else have you got that's new?
Okay,
You got a new
brand
rack?
new. I think this is I did do one video earlier today. This might be the second video on the planet for the new Rupert Neve-designed R10 rack. Okay, you think about a rack, you think, oh, it's not that sexy, it's not that important. What's important in a rack is power. Having enough power, having clean power. You want filter, regulation, stiffness in the power supply. 2,400 milliamps of power, twice the required amount. You can see this is a loaded rack. It's using a third of the available power. What's important there when you run it, particularly if you're running at
Glad
full
you
level,
brought this up. It's important
punchy.
because I've been asked a lot about this as well. These are good things. I've been asked a lot about this as well because it's tough, you know, when guys are starting off. I actually recommend all the time, and I do recommend, if I was starting again from scratch now, I wouldn't buy a console. As much as I love my console, I wouldn't. If I was starting from
Don't tell me.
well, from zero. From zero. I'm not talking about
I know exactly what
10
you're
years
saying.
into your career, I have a console, but now, starting from there, I would invest in a 500 series rack, and I would buy different pre's and different compressors, because you're not paying for those huge boxes, you're not paying for extra transformers, you're not paying for power supplies, etc. This to me is the way I would be recommending people to start now. However, it's a little daunting for most people because the price differential is like anywhere from like $500-600 entry level to like a couple of grand.
This is an $899
Okay,
rack.
well, immediately, and the big one, when I ask everybody, and I want to say this because people ask me all the time, is they say you can't skimp on the power supply on your 500 series rack because all the equipment you put in it relies on that. You know, so thanks for bringing it up.
And it's not just the static. It's when you put them under load and you've got drums running through them and they're drawing extra current. We have a nice thing here. We have a power meter, so you can see how much you're drawing.
Great.
We have twice the amount of power required, and then more in headroom. Other important thing is a double shielded power supply. Why is that important? Because when you put a high gain mic pre in the slot right next to it, it's not double shielded, you're going to get some induced hum. And that's the other thing that happens in a not particularly well designed rack, is you get interactions between the slots.
Sure.
So that's about proper grounding, big enough rails, done right, laid out correctly. Seemingly simple stuff, but it actually matters.
No, it's important because at $899, I like that. That's good.
Internal power supply, which is also handy for the guy who's traveling. And on the back, we have XLR and TRS. So you can make a channel strip by just jumping the back with TRS. In other words, you don't have to be limited to 1 to 2, 2 to 3. You can go here, here, and here. You can get compressor beforehand, afterwards, however you want to do it, and still use the XLRs to drive it out.
What's the stereo flanger down there?
Okay, I knew he was going to find this. I'm waiting to see if he was going to notice this. Okay, we're lucky enough to work with our friends at a company called Bell Digital. They mostly do really high-end broadcast gear. So Dante monitors, SGI, de-embedders, really fancy, very specific high-end stuff. We love them for that. But we knew them back in the day for a company called Bell that had a flanger. And it was the flanger on the first Yes records. It was flanger on a lot of classic British records.
I was just listening to that the other day.
It's a rack-mounted flanger. They're very rare. We talked to them about, could we bring this back? Because I don't know about you, but a lot of in-the-box flangers to me aren't deep enough.
Where's the screwdriver?
They don't do the zero crossing right, which is another thing. They won't trigger.
Really?
This has envelope control. It has trigger. It'll do cross-feed flanging. It's a true stereo flanger. Some really cool features about this. This is a brand new thing for them. New old stock chips. So these are the original chips in it from back in the day. Bucket Brigade chips.
Oh, these new old stock?
Yeah.
So original chips?
Yeah.
New old stock.
Yeah. The sound, you just can't replicate this.
Oh, it's amazing.
This is coming out. This should start shipping, I think, in the next 30 days.
Wonderful.
It's going to be right around $11.99.
So there's a place in Laurel Canyon I feel you should ship one of these to. I don't know if you...
Well, maybe, it might be a good idea to put it through its paces. We'll get a review going on that.
Well, those first few Yes albums, the Yes album itself is one of my favorite records. It's the ultimate driving album for me. What's the song where the second track comes in and plays at the same time?
Oh, the crossfades. Yeah.
Down, down, down,
I'm blanking, but
getting all obsessional and weird.
Google will help us.
Yeah. But Google, please, if you guys remember what that track is on the Yes album, where the song pans to the left and a second track comes in, playing, it just genius.
And they did this in the mastering phase to do that, because at that point in time, it's not Pro Tools. You can't overlap tracks. You got to start one tape deck, stop another, fade it up, fade it down. And because you're actually mastering vinyl at the same time, ladies and gentlemen, Pete Lyman.
Hey, Pete Lyman.
We got a little stop in, a little thing.
Yay.
And what are we drinking today, Pete?
I'm empty. This was tequila tonic. It's empty now.
Somebody get this man something to
Somebody give
drink.
him a drink.
You guys get back.
Ladies and gentlemen, Pete Lyman. Pete Lyman.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Paul Wolf.
Mr. Paul Wolf. Now with fixed
Hello,
design.
Paul Wolf.
Hello, this is Mr. Paul Wolf.
Hey.
This is the fun we get to do it
I know,
now.
and I love Rupert Neve, and I have been friends for many years. I absolutely adore him. and all of these guys that he has.
I've known Paul since 1980 or 81.
Yes.
We swapped for gear back then.
I want to get the band back together.
Get the band back together.
And you guys could go on the road.
It could.
The hocking concerts in the back of a car.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey!
Ladies
This
and
is what
gentlemen,
happens
Paul Wolf.
when you talk. Is it just one thing leads to another, and it makes absolutely no sense.
This man is actually an audio legend. I gotta say this.
I'm an audio ledger.
When you're not sure why we're talking to him, use the Google.
So, we're going to do a giveaway. And we're going to give away this beautiful DI.
We're going to give away that beautiful
I went for the
DI.
headphone.
That's a beautiful headphone amp. With my gorgeous, see these gorgeous audio
We did one of those before. We did a
Look at
giveaway of
these.
one of those before.
We did.
But the DI is beautiful. We love it. We use it.
What's cool about this, it'll take plus 21.5 dB on the input side. That's the full output of an interface. It'll take 1,000 watts in the speaker position. What's that? That's an Eden 800 wound out. That's a couple of SVTs. You can use it with anything. Class A, again, kind of overusing this, it's got that weight in the low end. That's why people buy this DI. We can't make these fast enough.
So as ever, please do all the usual things. You tweet, you go to the Facebook page, all of those great things, and you can win the DI. Thanks very much, my friend.
Awesome. Thank you. Here's to
appreciate
my
it.
friends that produce like a pro. This is an awesome man. Enjoy.
Have a marvelous time recording and mixing.